Drones were seen hovering ominously over major international airports, a disruption that immediately caught global attention. This wasn't random, this was calculated, a test of response times, surveillance systems, and the readiness of airspace defenses. NATO didn't hesitate. The reaction was swift and strategic, almost instantaneous. Within hours, countermeasures were deployed, and what looked like an isolated threat revealed itself as a chess move in a far larger geopolitical game. Putin's so-called shadow ships, vessels lurking in strategic positions to assert dominance or provoke fear, found themselves trapped in zones they had previously considered secure. It was a demonstration of power, a spectacle of strategy, but also a signal. Modern warfare isn't just bombs and tanks, it's drones, cyber operations, and the silent hand of economic leverage shaping outcomes before physical confrontation even begins. The sequence of events exposed the vulnerabilities inherent in global security frameworks, where traditional power navies, armies, aircraft is now constantly challenged by rapid technological innovation. NATO's coordinated response underscores a new doctrine: immediate retaliation in multi-domain warfare, where airspace, cyber capabilities, and maritime control are interconnected. Putin's shadow maneuvers, while bold, were rendered ineffective not by brute force, but by anticipation, intelligence, and coordination. This illustrates a profound shift. Strategic advantage now hinges not solely on weaponry, but on the integration of information, speed, and anticipation. Meanwhile, the economic ramifications ripple across markets. Airports impacted by drone activity saw disruptions in trade and travel, highlighting how modern conflicts touch global commerce almost instantaneously. Supply chains, airline schedules, and even energy markets felt the tremors. The spectacle of trapped ships reflects the intersection of political theater and real economic stakes, forcing nations and corporations to recalibrate risk assessment models in real time. Every drone, every intercepted maneuver, every reaction is an economic decision as much as a political one, revealing the complexity of power in our era. Perhaps most striking is the symbolic messaging. NATO's rapid containment of shadow operations sends a warning that opportunistic threats will meet immediate and coordinated resistance. At the same time, Russia's strategy, while technologically sophisticated, underscores the limits of asymmetric power against a networked alliance capable of rapid collective action. What appears as aggression is met with a response that is calculated, predictable, and crucially non-escalatory to the point of immediate war, but disruptive enough to demonstrate control. This is the era of psychological, economic, and technological warfare converging in real time. Finally, this episode emphasizes that national security is inseparable from global interdependence. No action is isolated. Every drone, ship, or missile carries consequences for trade, alliances, and public perception. Putin's shadow ships being trapped is not just a tactical win for NATO. It is a case study in the mechanics of modern deterrence. The lesson is clear. In a world of drones, satellites, and interconnected economies, domination is no longer about physical presence alone, but about control over information, timing, and perception. Drones hovering over major airports are not just curious anomalies, they are the harbingers of a new form of strategic engagement, one that challenges our assumptions about what constitutes power and threat in the 21st century. Unlike traditional military assets, drones are low cost, highly mobile, and capable of striking fear without ever firing a shot. Their presence alone forces governments, militaries, and corporations to reconfigure priorities, to rethink protocols, and to invest in technologies they may have once considered optional. Airports, once perceived as neutral nodes of commerce and transport, suddenly become front lines in an invisible theater of power. The very act of sending a drone into these spaces signals both intent and capability, intent to probe weaknesses, capability to operate with precision and stealth. This is strategic communication encoded in machines, a language of threat that transcends borders, treaties, and conventional diplomacy. What makes drones particularly formidable is their psychological impact. Unlike a tank rolling through a battlefield or a fighter jet overhead, drones operate silently, almost invisibly, creating uncertainty and fear among populations and authorities alike. The uncertainty is the point. How many are there? How fast can they strike? Are they reconnaissance tools, armed drones, or distractions for something far larger? The ambiguity magnifies their strategic value. In this sense, drones are not just weapons, they are instruments of decision-making, manipulation, forcing actors to respond, often at a cost to an invisible adversary. Moreover, drones redefine the geography of warfare. No longer is conflict confined to the front lines or distant battlefields. Airports, harbors, and even urban centers are vulnerable nodes, and control over these nodes becomes a measure of influence and leverage. The rapid deployment of drones allows states or even non-state actors to project power across borders without committing large numbers of troops or conventional hardware. It challenges established doctrines of deterrence. Nuclear arsenals and large fleets lose their immediate effectiveness against a swarm of drones that can disrupt transport, communications, and economic flows in real time. The integration of drones into modern strategy also highlights the intersection of technology and intelligence. Each drone flight gathers data, maps vulnerabilities, and tests defenses, creating a feedback loop that informs subsequent actions. This is strategic experimentation under pressure, a high-stakes game where every flight is both a probe and a message. NATO's response to the drone incursions over critical airports was not merely reactive. It was a calculated demonstration of a new military doctrine that emphasizes speed, integration, and coordination across multiple domains. In traditional conflict, response times were measured in hours, days, or even weeks, constrained by physical logistics and bureaucratic channels. Today, a decision to neutralize a threat travels simultaneously through cyber networks, air defense systems, intelligence operations, and command centers, allowing action within minutes. This multi-domain approach is the essence of modern deterrence, the capacity to observe, analyze, and respond in real time across air, sea, cyber, and even economic fronts. The drones were just the trigger. NATO's immediate reaction was the signal showing the world that asymmetric provocations can no longer exploit gaps in coordination or communication. What stands out is the precision and predictability of this response. NATO's intelligence apparatus had already mapped likely points of intrusion, assessed the velocity and trajectory of drone swarms, and prepared countermeasures that were both defensive and preventive. These actions reveal a broader shift in strategic thinking. It is no longer enough to hold large armies or fleets. Success now depends on the ability to network forces, integrate data streams, and anticipate adversaries' maneuvers before they materialize. In this sense, NATO's instant countermeasures were less about physical confrontation and more about demonstrating strategic superiority through timing, coordination, and preemptive planning. Moreover, the response underscores a psychological dimension that is often overlooked. By neutralizing shadow ships and drone incursions almost immediately, NATO communicated a message not just to Russia, but to the international community. Provocations will be met with precision, speed, and systemic control. This is a doctrine of deterrence rooted in credibility, showing that delayed reactions or indecision are no longer acceptable, and that alliances function effectively under pressure. NATO's multi-domain operations blur the lines between offensive and defensive postures, illustrating that modern warfare is less about brute force and more about orchestrated real-time control of information, technology, and movement. Finally, this incident emphasizes how the integration of air, cyber, and maritime domains transforms power projection. A swarm of drones over an airport is not an isolated challenge. It becomes a test of NATO's ability to synchronize intelligence, command, and operational units across national boundaries. The speed and precision of their response reveal a new paradigm: alliances that can integrate. Multi-domain operations are no longer reactive coalitions. They are anticipatory networks capable of neutralizing threats before they escalate. The imagery of shadow ships trapped by NATO forces carries far more significance than the mere containment of vessels at sea. It is a stark manifestation of symbolic power in modern geopolitics. These ships, strategically positioned by Moscow, were intended as instruments of intimidation, signaling reach, influence, and the capacity to project force across contested waters. Their very presence was a statement, a subtle yet powerful assertion that Russia maintains the ability to challenge NATO's maritime superiority and assert its strategic ambitions. Yet, when these vessels found themselves immobilized, their symbolic message flipped, revealing the vulnerability behind the aura of strength. In this theater, the physics of movement, who can navigate where and when, becomes entwined with perception, legitimacy, and credibility on the world stage. The trapped ships are not just naval setbacks. They are metaphors for the limits of unilateral action in a hyper-connected, networked global order. This episode underscores a critical lesson about modern warfare. Power is as much about signaling as it is about kinetic capability. Shadow ships serve as floating billboards of intimidation, but their effectiveness depends entirely on the perception of invulnerability. When NATO's coordinated strategy neutralized them, it reasserted the alliance's narrative of control, demonstrating that technological sophistication and alliance cohesion can negate audacious maneuvers. The psychological resonance of this event cannot be overstated. Onlookers, both allies and adversaries, interpret trapped vessels as a demonstration of accountability, consequence, and the limits of bold unilateral action. It is a reminder that even the most calculated displays of power are ultimately measured against the capacity of opponents to anticipate, contain, and neutralize threats. Moreover, the trapped ships highlight the evolving interplay between physical presence and informational dominance. It is no longer sufficient to simply occupy a strategic position. The world's perception of control, maneuverability, and threat is increasingly mediated by intelligence, reconnaissance, and rapid response capabilities. NATO's ability to monitor movements, predict responses, and enforce containment reflects a profound shift in power dynamics. Control over perception often outweighs control over physical space. Every trapped vessel becomes a case study in how alliances leverage coordinated information, timing, technological advantage to render adversarial displays ineffective. The symbolic power of these trapped shadow ships extends beyond the immediate confrontation. They shape narratives of strength and vulnerability, influence diplomatic calculations, and redefine the boundaries of strategic audacity. In essence, their entrapment is a lesson in the architecture of influence in the modern era, where the projection of power is inseparable from the perception of it, and the consequences of miscalculation are broadcast globally in real time. The presence of drones over airports and the entrapment of shadow ships is not merely a military concern. It is a seismic event in the global economic landscape. In today's interconnected world, every disruption in transport, logistics, or trade sends shockwaves through markets, supply chains, and financial systems almost instantaneously. When an airport is temporarily incapacitated due to aerial threats, flights are delayed, cargo is rerouted, and businesses reliant on just-in-time deliveries face cascading delays. These disruptions may seem localized, but their effects ripple across continents. Companies dependent on the timely movement of goods, whether electronics from Asia, oil from the Middle East, or agricultural exports from Europe, must recalibrate production schedules, inventory management, and financial forecasts. The very notion of economic stability becomes contingent on the predictability of security, revealing how tightly modern economies are interwoven with geopolitical realities. Moreover, the economic implications extend beyond immediate delays. Insurance premiums surge for transport and shipping. Airlines incur operational losses, and investors reevaluate risk in affected regions. Stock markets, always sensitive to geopolitical uncertainty, react not just to military movements, but to the potential disruption of commerce and energy flows. The entrapment of ships, once a symbol of strategic dominance, also functions as an economic signal. Trade routes are vulnerable, and global supply chains are exposed to political leverage. Nations dependent on maritime shipping must reconsider their contingency strategies, from alternative routing to strategic stockpiling, highlighting how modern conflicts blur the line between security and economics. This interconnection also underscores a broader point. Warfare in the 21st century cannot be isolated from financial systems. A drone hovering over a runway or a fleet immobilized in contested waters can depress economic activity, influence exchange rates, and even alter energy pricing within hours. For multinational corporations, these events necessitate real-time monitoring and rapid response strategies, where decisions about production, investment, and logistics are informed as much by military intelligence as by market trends. In effect, modern conflict transforms every airport, seaport, and shipping lane into nodes of economic risk, turning geopolitical maneuvers into financial variables that reverberate globally. The economic ripple effect also reframes how power is measured. Military victories are no longer only assessed by territorial gain or the neutralization of enemies. They are evaluated by the disruption or stabilization of economies, supply chains, and markets. In this sense, NATO's immediate containment of drones and shadow ships not only demonstrated strategic superiority, but also mitigated potential economic chaos, reinforcing the inseparability of security and commerce in an era of hyperconnectivity. The confrontation between drones, shadow ships, and NATO forces illustrates a fundamental tension in modern geopolitics: the clash between asymmetric and network power. Asymmetric power is characterized by bold, innovative, and sometimes unpredictable actions designed to exploit vulnerabilities. Think of small, technologically advanced drone swarms or strategically positioned shadow fleets meant to intimidate. These tactics are often low cost, high impact, and psychologically potent, allowing states or actors with fewer resources to challenge more conventionally powerful adversaries. In isolation, such maneuvers may appear decisive, offering the illusion of control and dominance. They can disrupt schedules, create uncertainty, and even temporarily assert influence over contested spaces. Yet, asymmetric power has intrinsic limits. It relies heavily on the element of surprise and the inability of opponents to coordinate a rapid response. Networked power, on the other hand, thrives on integration, coordination, and the leveraging of collective intelligence. NATO's response to the drone incursions and shadow ships exemplifies this approach by synchronizing intelligence across nations, coordinating real-time air, maritime, and cyber capabilities, and executing rapid countermeasures. The alliance transforms dispersed threats into contained incidents. Networked power is resilient because it is distributed. It does not depend on a single asset, a single command, or a single technological advantage. Instead, it creates layers of redundancy and anticipatory mechanisms that make it difficult for asymmetric maneuvers to achieve strategic outcomes. In this sense, the entrapment of shadow ships and neutralization of drone threats were not random acts of force, they were the predictable, inevitable result of a networked system operating with precision and coordination. This dynamic highlights a larger lesson about contemporary conflict. The effectiveness of asymmetric tactics is constrained by the organizational and technological sophistication of the opposing network. A swarm of drones can cause chaos in a poorly coordinated system, but in a networked alliance capable of rapid information sharing and joint decision making, such tactics are neutralized before achieving meaningful impact. It also underscores the interplay between perception and reality. Asymmetric actions may appear dramatic and threatening, but their strategic significance is measured against the capacity of networked systems to absorb, anticipate, and respond. Ultimately, this confrontation exposes the evolving calculus of power. Victory is no longer solely determined by brute strength or audacity. It is increasingly about the ability to integrate technology, intelligence, and cooperation into a system that can counter unpredictable threats efficiently, decisively, and in real time. The asymmetric strike may grab headlines, but networked coordination determines outcomes. The events surrounding drones over airports and trapped shadow ships highlight a crucial reality. In today's world, security is inseparable from global interdependence. No nation exists in isolation. Every action, whether military, technological, or economic, reverberates across borders in real time. When a drone swarm disrupts airport operations, the immediate impact is local, but the consequences ripple globally. Delayed cargo, disrupted logistics, and shaken investor confidence. Similarly, the containment of shadow ships in strategic waters does not merely limit Russia's physical maneuverability. It sends signals across international markets, alliances, and geopolitical calculations. Every security maneuver carries economic, political, and psychological weight, reflecting a world where interdependence magnifies both risk and consequence. Global interdependence also transforms the meaning of deterrence. Traditional deterrence relied on physical might. Tanks, aircraft, and fleets projected strength, while geographic distance provided a buffer. In the contemporary era, deterrence is measured by the ability to anticipate, coordinate, and respond across a networked global system. NATO's rapid containment of threats demonstrates this principle by integrating intelligence, cyber capabilities, air defense, and maritime coordination. The alliance does more than neutralize isolated actions. It reaffirms its control over the broader architecture of security. This sends a dual message. Aggressive maneuvers will be met with immediate consequence, and no actor operates in a vacuum, free from the ripple effects of interconnected systems. The episode also underscores the fragility of modern infrastructure. Airports, shipping lanes, energy grids, and digital networks are all nodes in an interdependent web where a single disruption can cascade into global effects. A localized incident becomes an international concern because interdependence amplifies vulnerability. This challenges traditional notions of sovereignty, protecting national interests, now demands awareness and engagement with global systems. Security is no longer a purely domestic responsibility, but a collective endeavor shaped by alliances, economic integration, and technological interconnectivity. Finally, global interdependence redefines the calculus of strategic action. Every move is measured not only by immediate tactical gain, but by its cascading effects on commerce, alliances, and public perception worldwide. The entrapment of shadow ships illustrates this vividly. The maneuver on the water transforms into a global signal, reinforcing the intertwined nature of modern security and economic stability. In this context, the ability to manage perception, anticipate reactions, and coordinate across borders becomes as critical as any traditional military asset.